إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. قال الله تعالى في كتابه العزيز بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الذين قالوا ربنا الله ثم استقاموا تتنزل عليهم الملائكة ألا تخافوا ولا تحزنوا وأبشروا بالجنة التي كنتم توعدون وقال فاستقم كما أمرت ومن تاب معك ولا تطغوا إنه بما تعملون بصير. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, all praise is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, and we ask Him to send His greatest peace and blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and upon his family and his companions, and upon all the believers until the Day of Judgment. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Allah Azza says in the Quran, those who declare their Lord to be Allah Azza Jal, ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا, then they are consistent, then they are steadfast in this. تَتَنَزَّلُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ, the angels descend upon them. أَلَّا تَخَافُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا, that you shouldn't feel remorse, you shouldn't feel scared, nor should you be sad. وَأَبْشِرُوا بِالْجَنَّةِ, and have glad tidings of paradise. التي كنتم توعدون, the one which you were promised from Allah Azza Jal. And Allah Azza says in the Quran, فَاسْتَقِمْ كَمَا أُمِرْتَ, be consistent as you were ordered. وَمَنْ تَابَ مَعَكَ وَلَا تَطْغَوْا, and those who repented and turned with you and don't transgress. إِنَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ بَصِيرٌ, because indeed Allah Azza Jal can see everything that you were doing. One of the blessings we've been given is that Ramadan, alhamdulillah, began on a Friday and may end on a Friday. An occurrence that only occurs a few times within a lifetime, where Ramadan has that beautiful element of starting on a Friday. And Ramadan itself is like a metaphor of life. You begin with a great amount of zeal and trepidation of what is to come and how you will handle it. You then begin to get into your groove as you reach the peak within the middle months of consistency, normality, and visiting friends in ordinary circumstances. And then the twilight period of Ramadan is where the real effort comes out, where the extra stocks were pulled out before the end of the month. And that beginning of sadness comes as you begin to realize that Ramadan is beginning to end. But just like with life, Allah Azza wa Jalla places Eid at the end of Ramadan for us to feel the happiness this month has brought because of the rewards that we did. The Prophet ﷺ said, لِلصَّائِمِ فَرْحَتَانِ, for the fasting person is two happinesses. The first is when he breaks his fast. And the scholars have interpreted this either to be the literal breaking of the fast at Maghrib, or the breaking of the fast on the day of Eid. And the second happiness is the day that we meet Allah Azza wa Jal. But as Ramadan ends, I revisit a topic that I highlighted at the beginning of Ramadan, which is the idea of being consistent. Consistency as a subject and as a topic is filled across the Quran. Allah Azza wa Jal mentions ayah after ayah of those who are consistent, those who have istiqamah within their actions. Because if Ramadan is there to teach us anything, it is that we can indeed have the ability to fast for 30 days consistently, to obey Allah for 30 days consistently. And the question is, can we continue that habit? Can we continue what we've started in this beautiful month outside of this beautiful month? Are we able to be consistent in the salah that we've started praying as a family within our homes? This month has been a beautiful blessing in that it's the first we've had to be praying and staying within our homes, allowing us to establish beautiful traditions within our households. But what we'll learn in the course of this khutbah is that istiqamah is the greatest of miracles. It's the greatest of actions. Because for you to be consistent in everything you do requires a certain type of person, a certain type of intention. And we'll give certain tips and tricks on how to do so. The Prophet ﷺ was once asked by a Sahaba who began counting the grey hairs on his head. He said to the Prophet ﷺ, "What has caused you to have these grey hairs, these blessed grey hairs on your head?" The Prophet ﷺ said, "Shayyabatni Hud." And he pointed at the specific ayah within the surah, فَاسْتَقِمْ كَمَا أُمِرْتَ وَمَنْ تَابَ مَعَكَ وَلَا تَطْغَوْا إِنَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ بَصِيرٌ. So keep to the right course as you have been commanded, together with those who have turned to God with you. The idea of consistency is what the Prophet ﷺ pointed to as causing him to have grey hairs. The difficulty that it entails in being consistent with what you are ordered to do. Each day, 17 times a day, we recite Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. Guide us to the straight path. But the word mustaqim here comes from the same root derivation in Arabic, which is qawama, from the idea of qama, from the idea of being established and being firm upon what you do. But what's interesting is the derivation of the word istiqama is a specific form of that word which actually necessitates calling upon or asking someone for help for the thing that you do. So when we do istighfar, we're calling upon Allah to forgive us. And ghafara here is the core word. Istiqama in itself entails a meaning that you don't have the ability, or you can't intrinsically have the ability to be consistent alone, but rather we call upon Allah Azza wa Jal to help us to be consistent. Imam Qurtubi mentions that we ask al-iqama. Istiqama means utlub al-iqama ala al-din min Allah was'alhu dhalik. You call upon Allah Azza wa Jal to give you the consistency in what you do. So as we reach the end of this beautiful month and we approach the time when Eid will come and the celebrations, the Prophet ﷺ gives a very important tip for how we can begin to be consistent. He mentions in a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that the day of celebration, the day of Eid, the night of Eid, is a night that we should thank Allah Azza wa Jal and establish our prayers within it. We've been building a habit for 30 days. And for many of us, the moment we find out it's Eid in that evening, it's almost everything stops. We no longer attend the masjid, we no longer continue the prayer. But the Prophet ﷺ specifically singles out that day for us to continue the habit that we've begun. Consistency requires us to not give up even a single day of the habit that we're beginning to build up. A single day is enough for us to derail the habit that we're building. So rather than taking a single day off, allow yourself to continue, small but consistent, within the actions that you've begun to build. The Prophet ﷺ was once asked by a man if he was to fast, believe in La ilaha illallah, establish the prayers, and to simply abide by the 5 pillars within the faith, would he be able to enter paradise? The Prophet ﷺ replied with a famous reply, yes, if you can be consistent in that action. It's not about the individual act that you do. Many of us will seek these get-rich-quick schemes or get-to-Jannah-quick schemes where you can do this single thing and then you're off the hook for the rest of your life. You can relax and live happily ever after. But Islam has never built on that. Islam was built on the wudu of Sayyidina Bilal, where after every time he lost his wudu, he would repeat his wudu. Islam was built upon the consistency of Sayyidina Abu Hurairah, who whenever he'd hear any narration from the Prophet ﷺ, he'd endeavour to learn it. Islam was built upon the efforts of Sayyidah Aisha, who studied the depths of her religion consistently to be one of the greatest scholars to have ever walked this earth in our faith. Consistency is the key. And whether it's in the absolute basics of what we do, it will be enough for us to transform our whole life. The Prophet ﷺ says, قُلْ رَبِّي اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقِمْ. Say that my Lord is Allah and then be steadfast. This came in a response of a believer, the companion of the Prophet ﷺ, who came to the Prophet ﷺ and asked him to give him a single advice, that if he was to learn it, he would be able to enter paradise and it would suffice him for everything. And this concise statement packs so much meaning within what it contains. Where the Prophet ﷺ says, قُلْ رَبِّي اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقِمْ. Say, my Lord is Allah. Vocalize your intention. Build an identity of what it is you're trying to do. Understand the commands that Allah is going to give you, and that's what you're hoping to do. And then be consistent. As we reach the end of this beautiful month, we need to begin to make a list of actions, a list of things that we can begin to be consistent upon in our faith. How can we continue these beautiful blessings within our life of this month of Ramadan? One of the key things we've begun in Ramadan is the habit of fasting. Fasting as an act is one of the heaviest of deeds that we can present to Allah on the Day of Judgment. Its weight is so heavy that when the angels come to write it in its numerical value on our scale of your deeds, that Allah says to them, just leave it as written that this man has fasted. And that is sufficient, because I will personally reward him for that reward. Imagine the reward you will get of fasting when no one else is fasting. Practicing Siyam on a Monday and Thursday. Practicing Siyam on the white days within a month. You've built your body to be consistent during the hardest part of the year. So allow yourself to fast 2, 3, 5 days throughout the course of the year. Find the Sunnah fasts of Dhul Hijjah, of Muharram, and pick up a couple of days consistently throughout the week or month to allow yourself to continue this beautiful habit. And inshallah, Allah will give you the reward as if you're fasting all your lifetime through the consistency of your deeds. We began with praying in the night during the nights of Ramadan. Many of us will be praying 20 rak'ahs, 20 extra prayers beyond the requirement of our fard. Allow yourself to be consistent with just a small number of those each night, just as you've been doing with your family. After Isha, make a set time in the evening, 10:30, or whenever it's suitable for you as a family, to come together and pray 2 rak'ahs, just as you've been doing throughout Ramadan. This consistency has a powerful ability to be able to transform your life. Allah says in the Quran, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ تَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنْكَرِ. Indeed, prayer allows you to overcome, allows you to prevent, allows you to stop fahsha and munkar, the evils and the disbelief, the evil actions. When you are consistent in your prayer, a miraculous thing begins to occur. There was a study that was done upon those who they wanted to get them to become a bit neater. So they made a study to get people to become more organized. And each of them, they asked them to begin to tidy up their closet. But rather than giving them a large amount of tasks, what they did is they told them each week to do a specific task, but it had to be done at a specific time and place. The first week, they would just come and open the closet and close it. But it had to be done at the same time. The second week, they'd open the closet and then maybe move some hangers. The third week and the fourth week, they'd add incrementally each of their actions. What was interesting is that in doing so, these people began to become more consistent in all the other actions that they're doing. They began to become healthier. They began to become fitter, more conscientious people. They began to exercise more. They began to do all the other goals that they did because they were consistent in that single deed. When we're consistent in our prayers, Allah Azza wa Jal blesses us with that, through that consistency, to be good in everything else that we do in our life. And the same is true of the opposite. They were asked of people who smoked, who wished to and desired to change their habit of smoking. The study asked these people to, rather than saying that they're going to quit or not quit, they said you have to be consistent. Each day at this specific time, you have to smoke this specific number of cigarettes. And in being consistent, even with that, they noticed that actually they began to desire it less. Because consistency, as a way of changing people and behavior, has tremendous effect for the positive. So when we're consistent in our prayers, and when we're consistent in our salah, we find ourselves transforming ourselves in ways that we never imagined. If we can simply establish the 5 prayers of salah, that we pray them on time, every day, without missing any of them, inside and outside of Ramadan, you will notice all the other actions beginning to transform. The Prophet ﷺ was asked by Rabi'a ibn Ka'ab if he can. The Prophet ﷺ, after him seeing him being pleased, he served him, he did something for him. The Prophet ﷺ asked him, "Ask me something and I will give it to you, I'll pray for you." So Rabi'a answered, "I ask for your company in paradise. I ask for you to make dua that I can be with you in Jannah." A dua I'm sure we're all making throughout Ramadan. Everybody's been asking for Jannat al-Firdaus. Everyone's been asking for the company of the Prophet ﷺ to be entered into the highest ranks of paradise. The Prophet ﷺ answered in a very interesting way. He answered by saying to him, "Then help me to achieve this for you by devoting yourself often in prostration. فَأَعِنِّي عَلَى نَفْسِكَ بِكَثْرَةِ السُّجُودِ." The Prophet ﷺ didn't just say, "Okay, I'll make dua, khalas, you're entering with me." And the Prophet ﷺ is the most worthy of having his du'as answered. But he gave him something that in itself is the key to entering paradise. And in doing so, he gave us a gift to be able to enter paradise with the Prophet ﷺ. If we wanted to be consistent in our prayers, in our salah, we will also attain the very same that Rabi'a ibn Ka'b asked for. Consistency in salah, consistency in our actions is perhaps one of the toughest things to do. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah noted in his teaching of classes, he says, the greatest of miracles a person can possess, the highest of things. Now people imagine a miracle to be raising the dead or flying or doing all these tremendous things that we see. But the greatest karamah, the greatest miracle that we can be possessed of, not the Prophet ﷺ, but the greatest miracles that we, as followers of the Prophet ﷺ, can be blessed with, is istiqamah, is to be consistent in something that we do. When you meet people who've been praying for 40, 50 years of their life, every day without missing a single day. When you meet people who've been reading the Quran for a day or two, versus those who've been reading it for a year or two, or those who've been reading it for a lifetime, you see the impact that consistency has upon a person's life. Physically, it becomes very visible to a person that this person is a righteous person because of the effects of that consistency. So what practical things can we take away during this khutbah? As we exit the month of Ramadan, we have to begin to make a plan. We have to begin to set ourselves a goal that we can begin to achieve consistency in. Now the first and most important step for consistency is don't overstretch yourself. Set yourself a target that is achievable and measurable and something you can hold yourself to account. Consistency or istiqamah is about going in the general direction of something that you know you can achieve and something that you want to achieve. So if you make yourself a specific target, and even if that target is small, the consistency of it will make it heavy on your deeds. So if you're struggling at the moment to pray your salah on time, whether you'd usually be in an office and it's difficult to step away from your desk, or whether the kids are keeping you busy, then it's hard to be able to escape, or whether you go to school and praying dhuhr and asr is hard and embarrassing during class hours. Begin now to establish a habit whilst you're at home. Find a routine that you can get into that allows you to pray your 5 prayers. Because that, as the Prophet ﷺ says, is the first thing that you'll be asked about on the Day of Judgment. And if it is sound, if your prayers are sound, everything else will be sound. So make a habit that out of this Ramadan, that's the first thing you're going to try and do. If you struggle to wake up for Fajr, begin to wake up for Fajr from now. You showed that you were able to do it during this month, so allow yourself to continue that outside of this month. The second important element of consistency, so the first is to set yourself achievable targets. Make a list of each of the things you plan to do that you can assess next Ramadan to see whether you achieve them. The second important aspect of consistency is to continue regardless of what happens. Even if you fail for a single day, you've got to never break the chain. It's important to see the bigger picture, that even if you missed a single day in the week, you still fasted or you still prayed for 6 days out of the 7. And that consistency of not wanting to give up even a single day will allow you to build a very fruitful habit. One of the cognitive biases, one of the biases that all of us as human beings possess, is that we think that a single failure is enough to stop months and months of action. Somebody could be dieting for 2-3 months consistently, effectively, they're seeing the change. Then they're invited to a wedding and they see something they like to eat, they eat it, and then they feel, oh, I've given it up now, I might as well just carry on. Or somebody who's trying to stop something haram. They have a sin that they know they're trying to stop. If it's smoking, if it's seeing something you shouldn't, if it's using words that are not pleasing to you, unto Allah Azza wa Jal. One slip of the tongue is like, oh, I've started it now, let me carry on. Remember, the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jal never stops and starts. It's always there. And that so long as you continue to attempt to be consistent, Allah Azza wa Jal will begin to open it up for you. And if you fall short at any point, remember that you can always turn back to Allah and continue your habit. So the first, begin to make a list of actions that you can do. The second is that if you ever fail, be realistic. Don't worry about falling short on a day or two, but continue the general trend of consistency, and inshallah you'll notice that habit begin to form. And the third and the most important of all the actions is that we have to ask Allah Azza wa Jal to help us. Istiqamah intrinsically from the word, as we pointed before, is not something we can develop alone. It's something we have to call upon the Creator of the heavens and the earth to place within us a consistency to be able to act upon the desires that we have. If we're seeking to pray 5 times a day, ask Allah to enable you to find it easy within yourself to do so. If you're wishing to give up smoking, to give up overeating, to give up whatever it is that you're hoping to do, ask Allah Azza wa Jal to place within you the consistency, the ability to do so. People often overlook this aspect of any action, believing that they have complete power and capability of doing things themselves. But Allah Azza wa Jal wants us to call upon Him, wants us to turn to Him, and He will help us with things in ways that we can't even imagine. And that sincerity of never giving up, of continually asking Allah Azza wa Jal, will help us transform our lives, inshaAllah. Consistency, istiqamah, is a gift that Allah Azza wa Jal grants to those He loves. And those who love Him are consistent in what they do. When people love playing football, not a week goes by except that they're there, ready, signed up to play that week. When people love their family, they will visit them regardless of what they do. So allow yourselves to build consistency in the worship of Allah Azza wa Jal. Build consistency in your habits, and build a list of things that you can hope to achieve from now till next Ramadan. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Of course, unfortunately, this is not a real Jum'ah Salah. This is a khutbah alone to take the place of what would normally be a Jum'ah Salah. You have to stand up and pray your 4 rak'ahs, Fard Salah for Dhuhr. Pray in congregation with your family and those around you. And inshallah, you can begin to get the reward equivalent to that in place of what we can do. Secondly, for the Eid Salah, we plan to do a sermon similar to what we're doing today, on whether it's Saturday or Sunday, depending on the day that it's announced. We'll be sending posts about how you can tune in, but it will be at 10:30 in the morning. There are instructions of what to do yourself, of whether you choose to pray Eid Salah amongst your family, or whether you choose to not do so. There are differences of opinion on that, and you can follow whichever scholar is advising you. But we will be giving a talk, again, to fill the place of what would ordinarily be a khutbah, to fill the spirit of Eid, inshaAllah. And the last thing I wanted to say, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned about Eid being a joyous time, something which Allah places the happiness in the hearts of the believers. Whilst we may feel sad now at the prospects of ending Ramadan and the prospects of an Eid during these difficult times, watch how Allah places the reward of pleasure of Eid within our hearts on that day. And inshallah, we will find ourselves happy and rejoicing in the bounties that Allah has given us. Jazakallah khair. Please remember us in your du'as. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.